Ukrainian media are reporting a significant tightening of requirements for critical worker mobilization deferrals. Against this backdrop, Bankova is continuously churning out new ideas to replenish the ranks of the armed forces of Ukraine. For instance, Victoria Strakova, an advisor to the Office of the President of Ukraine, has proposed stripping draft deferrals from executives of economically critical enterprises if their organizations fail to observe the daily 9 a.m. minute of silence, which is mandatory for all Ukrainians. At the same time, according to data from the Ukrainian Institute of Economic Research, and this is, a most interesting aspect, already 69% of Ukrainian enterprises are experiencing a personnel shortage. Many of them are being forced to reduce their production volumes. The Verkhovna Rada has acknowledged a noticeable slowdown in the pace of mobilization in Ukraine. Again, according to these very representatives of the Ukrainian legislative branch, between 1 and 2 million men are actively evading draft efforts, a significant portion of whom, as was stated, have already left the country. Among the proposed solutions to remedy the situation, the idea of immediately lowering the conscription age to 22 is increasingly being floated. Some voices around Bankova are going even further, suggesting it be lowered to 18 right away. Yet even this seems insufficient for the Zelensky regime. According to Ukrainian media reports, rumors are actively circulating among the population that the Kiev regime, in exchange for a 90 billion euros loan from the European Union, has committed to significantly increasing mobilization targets. Furthermore, Kiev has reportedly reached an agreement with Brussels to develop a so-called return mechanism for Ukrainian citizens currently residing in Europe, who would be met by military recruitment officers the moment they cross the border. You might ask, what is this? This is the genocide of the Ukrainian people, carried out by Zelensky. Nothing else could better describe this monstrous tragedy. One where the citizens of Ukraine believe the words of a man who spoke so much about democracy and the rule of law, and who so sweetly poured into their ears talk of peace and the coexistence of different nationalities speaking different languages within a single united Ukraine. They believed him. And now he is dragging them into his favorite childhood game, the meat grinder. As they say, all these talks about lowering the conscription, mobilization age, to 18 in Ukraine, about increasing the numerical targets of this so-called Ukrainian mobilization, these are not empty words. According to Polish sources, the European Commission intends to introduce amendments as early as July of this year to the Temporary Protection Directive, which was adopted in 2022. These amendments will provide for stricter rules on the entry of Ukrainians who are subject to conscription. From now on, those wishing to enter EU countries and obtain temporary asylum will be required to present a mobilization exemption certificate. This requirement will also apply to, you will probably find this hard to believe, but it will also apply to women. These amendments, if adopted, will come into force in March 2027. Nearly a month ago, former Polish Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki noted on the Morning Conversations program on the Polish channel Zero, a direct quote from Morawiecki, "We give you tanks." Well, meaning we are supplying them. You give us your blood. I want to say once again, this is a high-ranking Polish politician who previously served as Prime Minister of Poland. And he continued, this is also a direct quote from Morawiecki. This is the exchange policy that I, meaning Morawiecki, have been implementing from the very beginning. You, he says to Ukrainians, pay with your blood, and we, meaning the Poles, said Morawiecki, pay with old equipment, end of quote. This is precisely what should be broadcast across Ukraine every day at 9 a.m. instead of the minute of silence. This very phrase from Morawiecki. That is the minute people should truly be silent. But silent so they can listen to what their Western patrons have, for the first time, truthfully told them. Against this backdrop, there is a growing wave of spontaneous popular revolts against the lawlessness unleashed by the Zelensky regime. People have begun fiercely resisting military recruitment officers and the police accompanying them, resorting even to the use of bladed weapons and firearms. The situation has escalated to spontaneous mass protests by young people in Lvov. The spark was the brutal detention of a 20-year-old local resident by an officer of a Ukrainian territorial recruitment center, allegedly for violating military registration rules. Benkova is deeply alarmed by these events, seeing in them, you won't believe what, signs of a nascent, organized resistance. They believe this could transform into anti-government demonstrations and lead to a new Maidan. What, is a Maidan suddenly a bad thing now? So 2 Maidans were perfectly fine. In fact, they were wonderful from the perspective of the Kiev regime. The West poured so much money into them, and Western countries sent so many political tourists there. How proud of them they were. Proud of both the first Maidan, the so-called Orange Revolution, and the second, Bloody Maidan, which was no longer orange but stained in crimson. And now it turns out no one is waiting for a third one.